What a weirdly newsy Tuesday that was for, I don't know, can we call it mid-July yet? Early July. Once we are past the free agency day stuff and everything, typically starts to slow down, quite a bit went on there on Tuesday. Some of it good. Well, I don't know. Some of it fine. Some of it very much not fine. And I guess the Kyle Lowry stuff was good. We can say some stuff was good. Matt Robinson with you in the TCA studio, as always, here in beautiful Bytown, Canada. Scorching hot Bytown, Canada. I can tell you, for those who have been sort of waiting for the anchor to be lifted and me to sort of disappear, that will start to happen here later this week. I will take off for the cottage on Thursday or Friday. That doesn't mean we'll disappear. You know what happens around here. It just means the show moves to a different recording situation, and that means on Monday morning this time, you'll be joined by our pal Michaela Schreider from She's Got Game on the TSN radio network, and we will have lots to talk about with her, about both girls and boy sports, as she calls them. There'll be plenty to get to there, and she's always very helpful in these situations. I have what I call them, my group of enablers, people who are able to tag in, do the show remotely with me, so that I have to spend as little time as possible here in the studio to keep them coming for you guys. So she will kick that off with me this coming Monday. Not sure what else may or may not be coming this week before then, but, just so you got kind of a general lay of the land, we have started to get those questions. What are you doing still in studio and whatever? And normally it's more in August that I'm able to kind of disappear for weeks at a time, but we'll see if we can stretch this out a little bit, and we'll go from there. But as I said, it was quite an interesting day here over the last 24, 36 hours. Claude Giroux stuff, Daniel Alfredsson stuff, Kawhi too, I guess. Kyle Lowry stuff, and pretty brutal sports media news stuff. We'll touch on some of that here as we move our way through. Just kind of a quick check-in here. As you can probably tell already, it is just me with you this time. I hope you'll all tolerate that here as we, just cover our bases here a little bit. Because like I said, I'm not sure what the rest of the week is going to look like. So thought there was no reason to wait around, see what was going to come together. Let's just get in and comment on some of this. And let's start with Daniel Alfredsson, who is now the associate coach of the, wait for it, Toronto Maple Leafs. And it's being, I think it's fair to say, received with mixed reactions at both ends of the highway. I know neither city is technically at the end of the highway, just at both ends of the province, at both extremes of the Battle of Ontario. I'm seeing some Sens fans who are downright furious. It's treason. It's treachery. Those words mean the same thing. It's traitorous, which also means the same thing. It's bad that Daniel Alfredsson would go to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm seeing some Sens fans who are pumping the brakes short of that. Kind of more, he wasn't really that great at what he was doing here. I would have preferred he not end up with the Leafs. But, it's not breaking my heart that he's leaving. And I'm seeing some stuff that is clearly good riddance, like this is better anyway. Yeah. In Toronto, there seems to be some mixed reactions as well. I saw a couple of different tweets that basically say the same thing. Sort of like, are you seriously going to ask me next year to cheer for Nick Paul and Sergei Bobrovsky and Daniel Alfredsson? Like, this is what we're doing, eh? Okay. And obviously Toronto fans that follow the game a little more widely than just focusing on their own team, also aware that maybe Alfie wasn't all that good at his job here over the last year or so. Certainly running the power play. And that's the one thing most people are pointing to, was that the Sens power play wasn't great at the best of times, And it absolutely dried up on them completely in the playoffs when they needed it most. And those things are true. And it sort of reminds me a little bit of what I talked about when the Leafs announced this new John Chayka, Matt Sundin two-headed monster to head the organization. Like, how badly should Matt Sundin really want to tie himself to this? Tarnish his legacy a little bit if this goes poorly. And it may yet go poorly. Like, they have been very busy. And to a certain degree, lucky, right? Getting the number one pick and all that. We'll see what's going to happen. But there are no guarantees this is going to work. And Matt Sundin had a pretty sterling reputation in Toronto. And he's putting that on the line here. And I remember saying something similar about Daniel Alfredsson when he returned to the Ottawa Senators. You are incredibly popular here. How bad do you want to tie yourself, especially as an assistant coach, where whether this is successful or not will be largely out of your hands? Like, you will have a job to do, and fans will be able to judge to a certain extent whether you were any good or not at that job. But you aren't the one making the final call as the head coach, whether it be under Jacques Martin or whether it now be under Travis Green. You're not the ultimate decision maker here. Your fate will be out of your hands. The fate will not be in your hands as you build a roster, right? That's going to be Steve Staios and the senior management team. How badly do you want to step back in here, put your legacy on the line for something that isn't completely within your own control? And I think he had a strong enough reputation in this market, certainly he did, to absorb a lot of things. But there wasn't a whole lot of upside. Like, if you wanted to be a coach somewhere, maybe you get your start somewhere else. Because the inevitable outcome for every coach, especially these days, no matter how good you are, whether it's a head coach or an assistant coach or whatever, is you get shit canned. It happens to everyone. There is not one coach anywhere in the National Hockey League that is just indefinitely employed and will never be fired. It's not a thing. And so it's hard for both the team and the guy to enter into one of these things, whether you're Sundin, whether you're Alfredsson. And Sundin is a little bit higher up the pecking order with the gig he's got. But at some point, in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, ownership's going to say, yeah, thanks, Matt. Fuck, you're done, man. And it may not come with the thanks. And so I think it's probably not the end of the world that Alfie gets a promotion, right? This is the thing the NHL does, where if you're an assistant coach, but somebody offers you head coach, or in this case, associate coach, you can go. If you're a GM, but somebody offers you president, you can go, right? There's a bit of a loophole here. There's a bit of a technicality here. And I don't know whether Alfie did such a bad job last year that they would have been looking to fire him and get rid of him. And again, that's a very difficult PR move. Especially when, Brady has... Whatever. We don't have to get into all of it. But there's been some bad news around the Sens here lately. How bad do you really want to add more wood to that fire that's like, by the way, we fired Daniel Alfredsson? So there is a bit of a sidestep here that allows him to go somewhere else, albeit with a very nasty plot twist. Yeah. He's going to Toronto. And I think that's the part, clearly, that has irked some Sens fans and really bugged some. I'm seeing everything from fuck that guy, like your legacy is dead here, to I don't care, and everything in between. So we'll see. Are Sens fans prepared to boo Daniel Alfredsson? I don't remember now. I've been to a whole pile of NHL games. I'm sure most of you listening to something like this have as well. On a random-ass Tuesday, Leafs are in town. Do the coaches get introduced on the loudspeaker? Certainly if you're a Daniel Alfredsson, in most circumstances, I guess we don't know this for sure because he's never had this job anywhere else, and the franchise isn't that old. Might they otherwise say during a commercial break, welcome back to town, Daniel Alfredsson? Maybe you'd forego that, knowing that he's on a Leaf bench. But I'm pretty sure they introduced the head coach, right? starting for the opponent, Toronto Maple Leafs, these 5 guys, head coach of the Leafs is Jim Hiller. I don't think they introduced the assistant coach. So whether there will be a spotlight moment where Sens fans have a spotlight on Alfredsson and can boo him, I don't really know if that's going to appear, or whether they'll create their own moment, and how many of them really want to. Is this just one of those things that's so uncomfortable? Because this is short term in the grand scheme of things. Maybe Alfie's associate coach in Toronto for 3 years, for 5 years. I don't know. Coaches don't have long lifespans anymore. Maybe for a couple of times a year when he's in here, I have to see it. I can look away, because when he gets fired, he is still going to be part of the Sens alumni, a franchise legend. I don't know. Maybe I don't really want to boo him. But based on what I'm seeing online, there are at least some people who are pissed enough that are saying this is treacherous enough that they would want to have the opportunity to boo Daniel Alfredsson for doing this. It's an interesting dilemma. And Leaf fans, like I said, I think it's easier right now for Toronto fans. Like, the rivalry exists. Alfie was hated in Toronto. There's no doubt about that. I think we've had the conversation enough times that Toronto as a whole pays less attention to Ottawa throughout the season than Ottawa pays to Toronto. And it's just because of the way the media works and the amount of Toronto content that gets kind of shoveled out to the rest of the nation. And in recent years, before this last little burst where the Sens finally got back on the scene, it was also a lot of Toronto playoff games while there weren't Ottawa playoff games. So in that regard, it has been easier for Toronto fans for a while. They haven't had to eat a whole lot of shit until the last week of April, first week of May, whenever it would usually come about, and then they would eat a lot of shit. Point being, Toronto fans hated Alfie on the days that we would play the Senators, and on days where you were talking about the old Battle of Ontario and those sorts of things. But then they'd move on, and they'd hate Marchand, or they'd hate Matthew Tkachuk, or they'd whatever else. I'm not sure that the Ottawa thing lives as much in the consciousness of the Toronto fan, but Alfie did. Alfie was a villain. And so there are Leaf fans I'm seeing online who, what? This is the guy you needed, eh? You looked all over the place trying to build a top-notch new coaching staff, and you looked and went, I gotta have one of our franchise villains who just showed himself to do a pretty mediocre job in Ottawa running their power play. Like, this is what you needed to do? So I'm not sure there's a ton of excitement for it, but at the same time, it's fun for Toronto fans because it went this way. They are at least the ones taking the guy and not giving the guy away, not losing Sundin to Ottawa. And I do recall, you may have a better memory of this than I do, because there was a bunch of groups involved, but when Andlauer got the team, there were multiple bids. And I believe Matt Sundin was at least consulting on one of them. Like, I don't think it was the Ryan Reynolds bid. Maybe it was the Andlauer bid, and then they didn't follow through. I could be totally off on this. I'm not going to guess. I'm not going to stab at it. There was a few different bids involved. I believe Matt Sundin was tied to one of them. And whether or not he was going to come in and be part of management afterwards, he was at least consulting. And that did get the ire up a little bit around Leafs Nation of what the fuck you need with the Ottawa Senators for. But in this case, they're plucking the guy out of Ottawa. So for a day, it's fun. We stole your captain. And as much as Ottawa fans, like I said, all over the spectrum, completely indifferent to flat out furious, there is something about having to hear Toronto pull this stuff again, as Toronto does. So I think in that regard, it's easier for Toronto because they're on this end of it as opposed to the guy being plucked end of it, seeing your franchise legend walk the other way. But I imagine by tomorrow, the story's lost. And it'll pop up again maybe around training camp when you first see him wearing that blue and white, jacket around the rink, or at the home opener when he is introduced, as everybody is. Will Leaf fans boo? Will Leaf fans cheer? I bet there's a healthy dose of booing. I don't think this goes away quickly. But in that regard, I think when the spotlight is on him, in the same way that I asked when he comes back to Ottawa on the Leaf bench, I bet you that first night in Toronto, there's a healthy percentage of the fan base that boos him. And then I think this largely goes to sleep. I think you're going to see him become just another assistant coach. You, as a Sens fan here in the nation's capital, when you watch the Sens, you would notice him on the bench. Oh, I recognize that guy. That's Daniel Alfredsson, right? You would see him around, but he was no longer the face of the franchise. People do not clamor to interview the assistant coach. Some teams don't even allow their assistant coaches to speak to the media. For the longest time, the Leafs had that policy. You want to talk to somebody, you talk to the head coach. He puts out the message on behalf of the team. I don't know whether that will still be a thing under this new management, new coaching staff. But I don't know how prominent he will be in Toronto. I think he just sort of fades in to the background as one of the assistant coaches for the Leafs. And 3 or 4 times a year it'll flare up when Ottawa comes to town and when Toronto goes to Ottawa. I think right now Leaf fans will have some fun with it. I think right now Sens fans will feel how they feel about it. And then you kind of just go back to the rest of your summer, right? Well, at least the Sens didn't have to fire Alfie. I'm annoyed he went to Toronto, but it's not like he left as a player and went to Toronto. I know fans didn't love when he went to Detroit, but it's not the same. So we'll see how this all shakes loose. But it was fascinating. Like I said, I've seen the spectrum of people and how they feel about this around the nation's capital, from indifference to fury. But I think the most common refrain is, look, I could have lived with it if he was leaving, but there was 30 other teams. Did it have to be that one? Because this will be a thing when camps fire up around the NHL in September. The first shot of him in the Toronto Maple Leafs, the jackets the coaches wear out onto the ice at, a training camp, at practice. The first time someone gets a clean photo of him in a Toronto Maple Leafs jacket, that shit's going viral. It'll pop up again, and we'll do this all over again. But whether or not this was a good hire for the Leafs, I don't know. Look, I don't get the sense that any assistant coach can sink a team, so I doubt this is bad for the Leafs. But there isn't a whole lot of evidence to say that this is going to be great for the Leafs. Has he learned some things? Will he grow? I doubt Toronto puts him in charge of the power play. It didn't go very well in Ottawa, and they had Steve Sullivan take over at Christmas last year, and he did a very nice job. There was a noticeable lack of mention to Steve Sullivan's name when the Leafs did put out their press release. They mentioned the guys that were let go and the new guys coming in. So maybe you can read into that simply that, well, we didn't fire Sullivan, and Sullivan's not a new guy, so there was no need for him to be mentioned. Maybe they haven't decided yet what he's going to do. Will he go back to the Marlies? I don't know. But point being, I would hope they leave the power play with Steve Sullivan and not necessarily just hand it to Alfie. But a strange day and a strange story that I don't think anybody saw coming. Also, first thing Tuesday morning, Kyle Lowry was honored by the Toronto Raptors, and they went all out on this. They had a press conference for him to come home and sign a one-day contract, retire as a member of the Raptors, where he was beloved by the end of his time there, where he won a championship, and clearly where he associates his best days. It wasn't always like that, and we're not going to relitigate all of this. I'm not the right guy to do it anyway. But there were days where he didn't necessarily love Toronto, and the franchise didn't always seem to love him. But certainly, by the time, I liked the way Michael Grange framed it when he was writing for Sportsnet. He said, but they became family, and family is forever, right? And it's not always easy. It's not always beautiful. It's not always get along. There are ups and downs. But I thought that was well put, that they became family. And Kyle Lowry is absolutely part of the Toronto Raptors family. They announced that they will retire his number and hang his jersey from the Raptors next season. They haven't announced on what date that will be. I'm not even sure if the NBA season schedule is out yet. It must not be, or perhaps it isn't, or they're just looking for the right time to do it. But they're going to have also a charity golf tournament with them in September. They did up the Raptors locker room here today, and basically as a Kyle Lowry museum. It was really well done, and it was nice to see him talk. And he was, for a long time, one of those kind of prickly guys for the Raptors, right? Like, he wasn't necessarily this easygoing, great to the media kind of guy. He wore his heart on his sleeve, and when he wasn't happy, you knew about it. And when he didn't really feel like talking, you kind of knew about it. And all of these things softened a little as he grew up. But to see everyone so happy for him there on Tuesday morning was pretty great. It was cool to see Kawhi Leonard also in the front row there at the press conference. He was in town. I haven't even seen whether this trade has been made official. I keep reading that they will now work on, that Kawhi has a new agent and they will negotiate what this new contract extension is going to look like. But whether the trade is even actually official, I haven't seen. But he was there, and there was talk, if you remember back in that 2018-19 championship season for the Raptors, that maybe they didn't get along so good. Because essentially, they traded away Kyle's best friend in DeMar DeRozan and brought in Kawhi Leonard. And there was absolutely animosity between Kyle and the front office and Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster. But he was also blaming Kawhi a little bit. At least sort of in a circular way, in a kind of from a distance kind of way. You're the guy that replaced my best friend. And by all accounts, it got squashed, and we can see that now. The fact that Kawhi would show up for something like this, and they won a championship together in 2019. Obviously, the relationship has improved since the early days of Kawhi coming to Toronto the first time, but, he didn't have to go out of his way. And it sounds like he was in town anyway. Like, I'm not suggesting he flew all the way from California to be at this thing, but even still, he could have, with plausible deniability, said, I'm not going to go. This is Kyle's day. I will, not make myself a part of the story or whatever else. But no, he showed up, sat front row. I don't know. That's a nice moment for the Raptors. Kyle Lowry deserves it, deserves the respect that he's getting, and it's nice to see that he's going to be honored here and his number's going to go up. And I thought, on July 7th, number 777, this was not an accident that this is when they had this thing. I thought that would be the biggest sports story of the day until the Alfie news. I should also mention before we wrap up, I want to touch on this, as it continues to be painful to watch the erosion of not just sports media, but media in general, journalism in general, radio in general across Canada. It came out and became obvious first on Tuesday morning that Vancouver's Sportsnet radio was shut down. Later on in the day, an hour or two later, maybe, Calgary went dead. And these are all, of course, Rogers stations. And then you zoom out, because it takes a minute, right? My world is so intertwined in sports that the people I follow and the people I read and whatever are talking mostly about what the fuck's going on with Sportsnet radio. I noticed that first. But it becomes obvious that Rogers has closed 6 more radio stations across Canada, not just Vancouver and Calgary. And it's not just sports, it's news and talk radio. It also impacted stations in Hamilton, in Nova Scotia. In total, it looks like about 220 jobs. And it sucks. Like, this is getting to a point where we all, I think we know these are all at some point coming to an end. And it's just this slow burn. And I can't imagine, I've read enough of these guys who've worked for these stations whether it be the Bell Media ones that have already closed or the now the Rogers ones that are today's news. You kind of know this is hanging over your head, the sword of Damocles, right? Like, you've watched both of these major telecoms slowly shutting down stations across Canada, and you kind of go, well, we dodged the bullet this time, but when is it coming for us? Because they all know it is coming for them. Radio, especially AM radio, is dying. And the business just doesn't really support the format anymore. And I know that sucks to hear because we all love these guys, right? How many times have we had this conversation on this podcast about TSN 1200 here in the nation's capital? How many times have I talked about the guys I grew up listening to on the Fan 590 down in Toronto? Like, you kind of get used to them being part of your day-to-day. But that's because they are there every day talking to you for hours at a time. As opposed to the FM music format, where you can get by with like one person on. You probably need two in the morning slot. You need probably one midday, one late afternoon. And then you're just doing syndicated shit the rest of the way. And so it's much cheaper to do, and they don't have to be as good because they're just introducing songs. That's not meant to be a shot. I studied radio. I have tons of friends. I don't have tons of friends of any sort. I have friends who do this job across Canada. Some of them are very good. Some are behind that. But you've heard it. Anytime you get in your car and you're driving and anywhere you go, your radio just kind of tunes and you hear whatever, and some of them you like and some of them you don't. But you only hear them for 2 or 3 minutes at a time. Here's what's going on. Here's the anecdote, the story I have to tell. Here's the local event, and now such and such song. That doesn't work in talk radio. You need people who can improvise, who can react to news breaking at a time, who can carry a conversation for 2, 3, 4 hours at a time. That's a different skill set, and it costs money, and it's hard to find those people. And so clearly, Rogers and Bell have just made a decision, well, we're just not going to do that then. We'll syndicate, we'll podcast, we'll whatever else we need to do, but we're not going to keep these stations going. And that sucks. But that's the business model. Like, I'm seeing a lot of people, and maybe this is the wrong time to bring this up or whatever, but I'm seeing a lot of people lash out at Toronto. Oh, I guess Toronto knows what Calgary wants to listen to. I guess Toronto knows what Vancouver wants to listen to. I get it. That's where headquarters is. But it's about as lazy as the NHL, what are they? The video review room. We're calling Toronto. And if it's a Montreal-Boston game, like, well, I guess Toronto decided we didn't get that, or, that wasn't fit. You kind of can throw that barb, right? Because it's a rival city, or we don't like Toronto anyway. It's no different than baseball's review room is in New York. And most broadcasters, most of the time, can just go, they're talking to New York, they're talking to the review room, whatever it is. But there are some of the time when it's a particularly harsh call to go, oh, I guess we'll let New York decide this one. You're like, all right. There's some venom to that, right? And so I get it that the Rogers headquarters are in Toronto, but no one at that station said the people of Vancouver don't deserve sports talk radio and the people of Toronto do. They have looked at the business model of it and said, yeah, we're just cutting that. It's just a number. It's just a number. You guys will remember this. Some of you have been around long enough. When Lever Sage came in here for the very first time after he was let go by TSN 1200, and that was a decision made above the level of TSN 1200. That was Bell Media. He explained it all right then. He goes, they just look at the spreadsheet. We need to cut such and such number of dollars today. And we looked at it and we said, we can add Lever Sage's number to Sean Simpson's number, and we will meet our budget. Those two are gone. And that's it. They didn't even look at the name. They looked at the two salaries based on seniority and how long you'd been there and the job you do. We need to get to this number. It's salary of employee 6943 and employee 6732. And that's heartless, and it sucks, and it's shit. But it's not a, we're picking Lever Sage and Sean Simpson. It's not a, we're picking Calgary and saving this. It's all numbers. It's all numbers. And it sucks. And it will happen in Toronto. It will happen in Ottawa and in Montreal. These are not businesses that are going to survive long. AM radio is not still a thing. You and I listen to it. We like talk radio. We like sports radio. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and legitimately harder and harder to make money. The shit comes from the way Rogers does this. And this is an age-old thing in radio. They probably, in one of the shittier ways that they used to handle this, they would tell a DJ, or if a DJ was going to quit and gave his 2 weeks notice, so he's going to finish up on whatever, Friday, July 10th. Okay. He writes out this nice goodbye message he wants to say to his audience during his final break on his Friday show. They tell him on Thursday when he finishes that show, that's it, you're done. They don't let him come in for Friday because they're afraid of what he might say. It ruins your reputation in the industry. But if I am a radio host and I'm getting close to retirement age, or I don't plan to do this anymore, I could go on during that last break on Friday, and instead of saying, Ottawa, my time speaking to you was so special and I loved sharing these moments with you, I can go on and say, XYZ Communications Company is fucking balls. Joe Schmo Program Director is the biggest piece of shit any of you will ever meet. Now, the next station up the road can't hire that guy. It is a hell of a way to torpedo your own career. But if you don't plan to continue that career, you can really blow up a radio station. So they would often have these weird little moves where if you were supposed to be done on Friday at 5 o'clock, they would just tell you on Tuesday or on Wednesday or out of nowhere, yep, that was your last one, actually. We'll pay you till Friday, but you're not getting the microphone again. And somehow it's gotten worse. We saw it in Vancouver when they shuttered their TSN radio station out there. No heads up. There was a show happening in the moment, and it just went dead. And if you recall, they played that Green Day song that most people think is called Time of Your Life. I hope you had the time of your life. It's nice. It's nice. The song's name is Good Riddance. Now, I think everyone knows what Bell Media was trying to go for there, but fuck you. Could you dig a little bit deeper? Because the message you just sent was not good. But that's what they do now. They don't even do the thing where they pretend they're going to give you those last 2 weeks, or that we're going to finish up at the end of it's Tuesday, guys. The Sportsnet Vancouver morning show, and like they had their regular schedule on Monday, and on Tuesday, the morning show came on, and it was a replay of Monday's show. And then at 9 a.m., they switched over to syndicated Westwood One programming, and that was it. It was over. And I'm using that as an example because it happened across the country. It happened in Kitchener. I think I said Hamilton earlier. I meant Kitchener. Happened in Halifax. Happened in Calgary. Just out of nowhere. Yeah, we're not even turning on the mics today. We're not opening up the studio today. You're done. It's over. They don't give you any warning at all. It's a heartless industry. And fans have every right to be pissed. Listeners have every right to be pissed. But this isn't a Vancouver doesn't deserve this or that, or this isn't it. This is just numbers. And they have simply decided, as ruthless as it is, as disregarding as it is to anybody who's actually trying to make their living and raise their family on that job, they've just decided we're cutting this much out of the budget. And at some point, they will decide it's 100%. We are just done. Right now, we can make a little bit of money here, and certain markets are still getting a little return there. So for the moment, those ones can survive. But eventually, they will simply shut it all down. Sportsnet or Rogers or whatever will have one kind of studio where they produce podcasts, and those go out nationwide. It will be 32 Thoughts all day. And not essentially, not poor Kyle and Elliot all day, but it'll be our hockey podcast and then our baseball podcast at the Letters, and then and we will just do that. We will just have a series of podcasts that the whole country can have. And that sucks. Like, that will be shit for us sports fans, but it is nothing compared to what we are losing with the news stations that they shuttered today. Like, at some point, somebody's got to tell us what the fuck is going on. And I don't mean what the fuck is going on with why they're canceling these stations. Somebody's got to be there to tell you why this highway is closed, why this school district is cutting its budget, who's running for mayor. Like, as much as you and I are sports fans and are really, really sad to see these outlets closing and these people that we love listening to lose their jobs, it's the news that's the scary one, guys. Like, I'm sorry, and I know this sounds insensitive. We can find another place to listen to sports takes, and a lot of these people that lost their jobs today on that front will land on their feet. Winnipeg has done it. Edmonton has done it. Vancouver has an outlet that has done it. Like, you can start things up. You can find your own sponsors, and some of these long-time kind of beloved radio hosts can get back up on their feet on YouTube or on streaming and make a decent living. But that's just to tell us, hey, this is what's happening on the Leafs penalty kill today, and this is the Sens alignment for whatever, and the Canucks are playing whoever tonight. Why the fuck isn't the O-Train running today? Like, at some point, you need the news, and they're shrinking that just as fast, and that's the problem one. That's the scary one. Who's going to tell you what the fuck's happening in your own world? So, another bad... I saw one tweet. I shouldn't even bother bringing it up. It shouldn't be the point right now, but all of this stuff makes me crazy. If you are somehow listening to this podcast and you live in Calgary or Vancouver and you're pissed at Rogers, and you have every right to be, like, go ahead. Go ahead and see if Bell or TELUS or one of the smaller guys can give you a better deal on your cell phone or your internet or your cable if you still have that. Like, by all means, kick the shit out of Rogers if you want to. But be careful who you punish. Because the tweet I saw today was, should Canucks fans boycott the team until they take the Rogers name off the arena? Because it's currently called Rogers Arena, as is everything across this goddamn country, right? You're either Scotiabank something or Rogers something or Bell to a certain degree, which is actually half the problem with canceling your Rogers. Like, switch to Bell if you want, but you're 6 months, 18 months till they fuck you. So, but the home of the Vancouver Canucks is currently called Rogers Arena. And so the idea, I guess, is that you're not going to go to any Canucks games, you're not going to buy any merch, you're not going to support the team until they take that name off their arena. And it's just kind of a petulant misunderstanding of how the world works. The Canucks and whatever their ownership group is called have signed a naming rights contract with Rogers. You can't just wake up tomorrow and say, we're pulling that name down without being in direct violation of that contract, which obviously they're not going to do. They will be sued into oblivion. I have no idea how much time is left on that contract. Like, you'll remember before that place was called GM Place. You know, here in Ottawa, before it was Canadian Tire Center, was it Scotiabank Arena and the Corral Center? Like, all of these things, it's not the name of a building, it's just the current sponsor. And those people pay money for a certain number of years to have their name up there. And if the Canucks were to turn around tomorrow and say, our fans are mad at Rogers because their favorite radio station closed, so we're going to take that name off and put a new name up there, guess what? You will have lawyers on your door before you've even got those letters off the building. So don't punish your own team. Like, don't boycott like I said, cancel your cable. Cancel Sportsnet Plus. Find other things in your community that Rogers is actually directly responsible for. And if you're that pissed about this, and that's totally up to you, take it out on Rogers. Don't start shit-kicking your own team, because that has a zero. I'm telling you, the chances of that having any effect on the name on the arena are absolute zero. And I'd be pissed too. If my normal routine before I went to a Vancouver Canucks game, I'd be listening to Halford and Brof in the morning on my way to work, and then on the way to the game, I'd be over to that Rogers news station getting the traffic, and then I'd listen to the pregame show the rest of the drive. And now you've taken that all away from me, only for me to walk right up to the front door and see that giant Rogers logo, up on the roof. Fuck, I'd be mad. That would really piss me off. But I'm not going to turn around and leave. Actually, I no longer care about the Canucks then. Well, you're punishing yourself and you're punishing the Canucks. Rogers is getting that money one way or another. So you need to find direct ways to inflict damage on Rogers. And that's not one of them. That is inflicting damage on you and your favorite team. Power to you, I guess, but it won't change shit. So, a weird day, as I said, for July 7th. A random Tuesday in July when things are supposed to be getting quiet and calming down. I feel like there was something else I was supposed to talk about on this one, and I left my phone in the other room where I had my notes, so we're just kind of winging it here. And I don't remember what it was, so it couldn't have been that important. We're just gonna wrap it up. But certainly, best wishes to everybody who was affected by this today, whether you were on the sports talk side of it or the news talk side of it. It's brutal. Like I said, it's just brutal. It comes out of absolutely nowhere. You're not given any kind of heads up. It's just somebody unplugs your microphone right in front of you, basically. And yeah, you're done here. 6 more stations. 2 of them sports, 4 of them news. We're going to have to, at some point, decide who the fuck's going to tell us what's going on in the world around you. Because it's going to be important. I acknowledge that the AM radio dial is no longer where business gets done. But it's not like Rogers today said, we are moving these 6 stations from AM to FM. It just said, fuck you, we're done. So, like I said, this isn't adapting. This is shrinking. It's all about the spreadsheet. And that sucks. So all my best wishes and to everyone who was let go today. It's a motherfucker of a business right now. And I have no idea how much longer it will even be around. And I sympathize with those who, like I said, have that sword of Damocles hanging above them. I'm happy for you right now that everything is, that you've still got your gig, but it comes for everybody, it looks like. It's just where we're at in 2026. Radio is not going to be the thing. So on that dour note, we'll shut it down. We'll see if we can come up with anything else to do and talk about throughout the rest of the week. And if not, we'll talk to you on Monday morning with Michaela Schreider. There will be plenty to get to with her, no doubt. So that should be fun. My name is Matt Robinson. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.